Jake Bates kicked a 52-yard field goal at the buzzer to win it as Detroit overcame 5 interceptions thrown by quarterback Jared Goff. The Lions improved to 8-1 overall, 5-0 away from home, while the Texans dropped their first game of the season at their home field. They're 6-4 with the loss. Goff finished 15 of 30 passing for 240 yards and a pair of touchdowns. It was the 7th consecutive win of the season for the Lions, who sit on top of the NFC North ahead of the Vikings. Top 25 hoops on Sunday. Number 6, Gonzaga beat Arizona State 88-80. Number 15, Creighton 96-70 winners over Fairleigh Dickinson. Number 17, Indiana beat Eastern Illinois 90-55.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Oh no, my phone.
Hear that? It's the sound of a skater dropping her phone and smashing it on the ice. Yep, it's definitely broken. But at Verizon, we got you. This holiday, trade in any phone, any condition from one of our top brands and get a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus on Unlimited Ultimate and Watch 7 and Tab S9 FE 5G. That's over $1,800 in value. So you'll save big on 3 great gifts. Only at Verizon. Service plan required for watch and tablet. Over $1,800 value based on phone, watch, and tablet. Trade in and additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the propane tank on your grill first before hosting a tailgate.
Let's fire up.
Here, let me try. Seriously? You didn't check the propane?
Who wants chips?
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds.
Salt and vinegar?
You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Smithbrook, Illinois.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
You are listening to Football Full Circle, live right here on a Monday on SportsGrid Radio in Sirius XM to recap the entirety of the Week 10 NFL Sunday slate in the start of the second half of this 2024 NFL season. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. We get you set here over the next hour up until 1 p.m. Eastern Time to look back on a Sunday around the National Football League and preview the Monday night finale in Los Angeles between the Rams and the Dolphins. The second half of the season, Scott, is here each and every weekend, each and every Sunday, each and every game. An added bit of significance as that playoff picture starts to crystallize and take a little bit more shape.
Yeah, and there's a number of coaches, too, that the hot seat just got a little bit warmer after this weekend, including you here in New York and New Jersey with the Giants. And this is don't forget, the week off for the Giants coming back for the international game yesterday against Carolina. This is when sometimes when coaches changes are being made mid-season, this is when they do it. Matt Eberflus up in Chicago, 2 straight games without 23 straight drives without scoring a touchdown.
Oh.
Bears looking to make some changes. So we got the playoff teams on one end, Ben, and then we got the other teams that are just trying to keep their jobs, Mike McCarthy included.
Doug Peterson included in that as well. There is so much, Scott, as we round out the second half of a season, not just the postseason race, as you allude to, but some coaching changes in the futures of franchises. And boy, did we see that on display in more than a few spots on the Sunday slate. But Scott, as we start our recap, let's go back to Sunday night football. The Detroit Lions entering the second half of the year with a 7-1 record, and perhaps, despite the Chiefs being undefeated in the opening half, the best team in the NFL. And championship caliber teams find multiple different ways of winning. The Lions displayed that last night on a Sunday night in Houston. Detroit trailed 23-7 at the halftime break. They blanked Houston in the second half. They turned over C.J. Stroud. And despite the once efficient Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions, field goal kicking was huge across the National Football League on Sunday. It was monumental for Detroit. Jake Bates, 2 50-plus yard field goals in the final 5 minutes or so of regulation, including the walk-off winner from 52 yards out. The Lions improved to 8-1, Scott, winning in Houston 26-23. Now the Texans do cover as a 4.5-point home favorite. First time in any of the 8 victories for Detroit this year. The Lions have failed to cover a number, but there is no doubt Detroit one of the best in the NFL at 8-1.
Yeah, I tell you, when you could turn the ball over as much as they did, albeit one of those on a Hail Mary, but still, we've seen Hail Marys be successful, so it's an interception. 5 interceptions, Ben, and they still win the football game. I mean, it's just amazing. Houston gave them so many opportunities second half, and eventually Detroit, came through. I don't know why the Texans went against, going with Joe Mixon. I'm happy because I was actually going against him fantasy-wise, but, man, he was being productive, and I thought they would keep on giving him the ball. They didn't. C.J. Stroud, if you watch the game, like seconds after the game, tapped his chest, meaning this one's on me. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but that's a game if you're Houston, right? Last year, we talked about this, Ben, they're 5-4 now. Last year, you find ways to win games like that. Now you get a first-place schedule. Now everyone's all geared up to play you. You're on Sunday night, Monday night games, and it's just not as easy second time around for these teams. They're still a good team, but I don't think they're on the caliber of, like, if you want to bring up clubs that can challenge Kansas City when everything is said and done. I think they showed last night they're not quite at that level.
It is interesting, Scott, because Houston is so shorthanded throughout this year. Detroit finding ways to take advantage. And as we mentioned, field goal kicking was huge yesterday. 11 missed field goals, 3 walk-off winners. Special teams as a whole was big. 2 blocked field goals. We'll talk about what happened in Kansas City in just a little bit. A few muff punts that resulted in points as well. All 3 phases for a reason. And Scott, Jake Bates, a UFL legend that spent his UFL career for the past 2 seasons with the Michigan Panthers, made a 62 or 63-yarder, something of the sort, earned the spot this year with Detroit, hits the game winner from 52 yards out. Kaimi Fairbairn missed a 58-yarder on the Texans' final offensive drive, did drill a 56-yarder in the opening half. And Scott, although C.J. Stroud takes the blame, as you would expect out of any good quarterback, despite how young he is in terms of his NFL experience, he did throw multiple interceptions in the second half. It didn't really result in much for the Lions because on the ensuing offensive drive for Detroit, Jared Goff then threw an interception. 7 straight wins for Detroit, Scott, but in the previous 6 consecutive, Jared Goff had 22 total incompletions and only 1 interception. High efficiency numbers. Last night, 15 total incompletions in one game in 5 INTs, and still the Lions found a way to win. Now just 44-19 against the spread with Dan Campbell, 69.5% cover percentage, but still by far the best in the NFL, and Detroit sits atop the NFC at an 8-1 mark.
And they are clearly the best team, right, in the NFC. Now, you want to say San Francisco, when everyone's healthy, they're not going to get a Ayuk back, but, maybe San Fran would still be the team. It's funny. Those were the 2 teams coming into this year, and it looks like it's going to be the 2 teams, going out. But, again, when you play as poorly as they did, and some of those interceptions were just horrible. You could say the Hail Mary, okay, don't blame them for that, but the other ones were just bad. And as you pointed out, and right after they got the football and they're all geared up, man, I tell you what, I give that Detroit Lions defense a ton of credit. Time after time after time, they sat down, and 2 seconds later, they were back on the football field because they threw another interception. To not be demoralized, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's a pretty good job of coaching. You got to give Campbell a little bit of credit here, I guess. I don't like his X's and O's, Ben, and I don't trust him at all in the postseason. But not getting those guys to quit, not that they would necessarily quit, but you know what I mean. You get thrown out there time after time after time, and having to force a 3 and out or maybe 1 first down like they did the entire second half. They didn't score the second half. Kudos to the Lions defense.
Yeah, absolutely so. And Scott, a lot of those questionable choices in the second half of the NFC Championship game last year could be said that the Lions didn't trust their place kicker. Don't think that's going to be the case anymore if Detroit makes that deep postseason run. So to the point from the odds, the Lions are the short favorites in the NFC at plus 195, more than $3 in front of San Francisco and Philadelphia. Both the Niners and the Birds at a 5-1 price. We'll talk the rest of the NFC in just a moment. But Scott, Detroit might be the best team, at least in the NFC or perhaps the NFL. The only undefeated team still remains the 2-time reigning Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. Again, field goal kicking, a huge component. If we give Detroit the benefit of saying championship caliber teams find different ways of winning? We know that is the case for KC. It has not always been pretty in these 9 wins to start the year, 7 of the 9 by a single score, but they end up always in the win column. Yesterday against the Denver Broncos, the Broncos got the ball back with just under 6 minutes to go. 13 plays, 43 yards to set up a very manageable 35-yard game-winning potential field goal attempt from Will Lutz. Should have been done. Should have been easy. The Broncos handed the Chiefs their first loss. Leo Chenal comes through the line and blocks the kick for Kansas City. Somehow, someway, Scott, the Chiefs hold on 16-14 to remain perfect.
It's amazing. I mean, all they do is find ways to win. It really is something. Now, they didn't cover yesterday, but for the most part, they've been covering even with these low-scoring wins. You know, they only got 1 win, Ben, this year by more than 10 points. 1. Only had 3 last year. And had a terrific record last year as well. So, you know, the days of Kansas City winning, 30-10, 35, whatever, they're gone. But, man, finding ways to win, they did it. And they had an opportunity to score a touchdown, and he missed Kelsey wide open in the back of the end zone, left the door open for Denver, and they still won the game. Amazing.
Amazing. The Broncos did cover as a 7.5-point road underdog in Arrowhead. The outlook for KC and those other top contenders as we continue to review the Sunday slate in week number 10 comes your way up next, live right here on Football Full Circle.
Ball is coming. Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Fire crews on both coasts of the U.S. continued battling wildfires Sunday, including a blaze in New York and New Jersey that killed a Parks employee and another in Southern California that destroyed more than 130 structures and damaged dozens more. Firefighters continued making progress against a wildfire northwest of Los Angeles in Ventura County that broke out Wednesday and quickly exploded in size due to dry, warm, and gusty Santa Ana winds. Meanwhile, New York State Police say they were investigating the death of 18-year-old Dario Vasquez, who died when a tree fell on him Saturday afternoon as he battled a major brush fire in Sterling Forest located in New York State's Greenwood Lake near the New Jersey line. 12 students from Salisbury University in Maryland have been charged with a hate crime for allegedly attacking a man because of his sexual orientation on October 15th. Police believe that a group of college-age men used a social media account to lure the victim to an off-campus apartment complex where the alleged assault occurred. All 12 have been linked to a fraternity at Salisbury University.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Every day, Cintas service reps help businesses get ready for the workday. They provide freshly laundered workwear delivered every week. Mats, mops, restroom and cleaning supplies. First aid and safety products to help your employees stay safe. They even test and inspect fire extinguishers and emergency lights. Cintas helps keep your business running smoothly. See what Cintas can do for you. Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
You ever try fixing your car and realize you're missing that one part? Yeah, been there. That's why eBay's my go-to. They've got millions of parts, guaranteed to fit. I'm talking brake pads for when yours have seen one too many miles of stop and go. Oil filters, because you don't mess around with your engine care. Even got this cold air intake on my watch list. I might just go for it. To keep the ride cool and your DIY streak high. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Fall is almost here. It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Recapping week number 10 in the NFL Sunday slate here on this Monday on Football Full Circle on SportsGrid Radio. So, Scott, as we said before the break, courtesy of Leo Chenal breaking through the game-winning potential field goal attempt for Denver and blocking Will Lutz's 35-yard try. The Chiefs remain perfect, the lone undefeated team in the NFL at 9-0. 7 of the 9 wins decided by a single score. The victory margin for Kansas City on average, Scott, in these 9 victories, just 6.4 points per game. It's 9th best around the NFL. And, of course, KC is the only team without any losses that would provide a negative to that average victory margin. So some have said the Chiefs are not the dominant and impressive team that we might expect a 9-0 team to be. And yet, here they are, still perfect. They're only 1-4 against the spread in games where they are favored by at least 5.5 points. But, Scott, it was similar arguments last year. This is the year to knock Kansas City off its perch. They win a second consecutive Super Bowl. And here they are at 9-0, entering the second half of this season, the only unbeaten team left in the NFL.
Yeah, it's amazing, Ben. You know, they've won 9 straight games in contests in which they trail by 7 points or more.
Crazy.
They've won 12 straight one-score games. They're now 16. It's either 16 or 17-1 against Denver. It's just like all these obstacles that are thrown their way, and yet they're able to overcome them with all these remarkable numbers. I mean, it's just so wacky, you know. Yeah. And here's more credit to, the coach. I don't know if it's Andy Reid that actually did this, but it's one of these little pet peeves that I always have. They overloaded, the field goal was on the right hash mark. So they overloaded their right side. Used to be old school. They would overload the middle and just barrel over the center, right? The NFL said, we can't have that. These poor centers are getting killed. So you generally have 5 on one side, 1 on the front, and then 5 on the other side. And I always said, Ben, how come you don't have like 6 or 7 on one side? You can't do it during the game because field goal kickers will see that and probably run a fake. But at the end of the game, where there's no way in the world the team is going to run a fake field goal, overload the one side, just run over that left side of the blocking angle, which is what they did yesterday. And they had like 3 or 4 guys that could have blocked that field goal. So they always seem to be one step ahead of everybody else in the NFL. Whether it's Mahomes, whether it's Kelsey, whether it's Andy Reid, special teams coach here. Officials, although the officials, I don't think yesterday played a role, which is kind of nice to have at least the Kansas City win, a close win, really not come down to the officials. But they're the best team, still getting decent price, 4-1. I've said this for a few weeks now, Ben. Who's beating them in Kansas City? Can Buffalo do it? I really don't think so. The one team that you throw little caveats out there, but maybe Pittsburgh, if they get the kind of quarterback play that they've gotten these last couple of weeks with a good running game, terrific defense. But bottom line is you're going to have to go through Kansas City and holding on to a 4-1 ticket for them to win the Super Bowl, knowing you can hedge if they get to the Super Bowl, I still think is a pretty good bet.
Yeah, Scott, it's you can't fault that thought, right? Even if it sounds simplistic. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs, we know what they have done. It's because we've seen it for 6 years, and even last year was the first time they went on the road on their way to an AFC championship game for a 6th straight season and a Super Bowl appearance for the 5th time in those 6 years. And they still found a way to get it done. And to your point, Scott, Dave Toub, the longtime special teams coordinator who has worked with Andy Reid and has been in Kansas City for some time, is highly regarded as one of the best in the business. Yesterday on the pregame show for Sunday Night Football, Mike Florio, NBC's NFL insider, spoke with Leo Chenal, the guy that blocked the field goal, and he was one of many that could have got some arms or hands on it because of how they overwhelmed that Broncos field goal line. Leo Chenal said that on the sideline, of course, they have tablets. They can look at images. You often see quarterbacks trying to figure out what the defense is showing them in coverage. Leo Chenal said he used one of the tablets and noticed earlier in the game, the extra point try for the Broncos felt a little bit weak and the guy that he was lining up over. So they learned in-game how to block a field goal. Nobody's doing that. And Kansas City always finds those advantages and edges. It's why they're perfect and 9-0. Scott, plus 420, the number on KC on FanDuel to win Super Bowl 59. Less than $1 in front of Detroit. But the Lions have that second best price at 5-1. Then the Ravens, who of course held on Thursday night to kick off the second half, and the Buffalo Bills await this upcoming Sunday as the Bills get ready to host the Chiefs in Western New York. Buffalo has now won 5 games in a row. They are 8-2 and a rather dominant win yesterday in Indianapolis against Joe Flacco and the Colts. The Bills win 30-20. It was a late touchdown from Flacco to Alec Pierce in the final 10 seconds that even made it a double-digit or 10-point loss for Indy. Buffalo covered as a 4.5-point road favorite. Total of 46.5 does sky over. Here are the Bills, Scott. They started 3-0. They dropped 2 straight. They have won 5 in a row from that point, covering in 4 of the 5 victories.
my only concern has been two more interceptions from Josh Allen. We praised him 7 straight games without any interceptions. And that was the big bugaboo with him, right? So if you're going to praise him for not having any INTs, you got to bring it up that he's now had 3 straight games with interceptions. So it is a little concerning. I was surprised a lot of people liked the Colts yesterday. I didn't. It's funny. I stayed away. It kind of scared me. Like, what am I missing here? But, they are clearly better than the Indianapolis Colts. So can they challenge? We'll see, right? There's only a couple of stumbling blocks possibly on, the Kansas City schedule. They got Houston, they got Pittsburgh on the road, and they got this game coming up this Sunday. So that should be a good one. A litmus test for the Buffalo Bills for sure. I got a feeling they lose, but as a Dolphin fan, I'm hoping somebody beats this Kansas City team. So this is one of my chips that I'm going all in on. Let's go Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo opens as a slight 1.5 favorite at home for the matchup in Western New York against KC. Again, the Chiefs, an underdog only one time this year in San Francisco in the Super Bowl 58 rematch, won that game outright. They have played multiple times throughout the regular seasons over the last 3 years, and of course, in the playoffs. Buffalo has won every regular season matchup since 2021. The Chiefs, the last laughed, of course, when it matters most in the postseason against Buffalo. We'll continue to break down the Sunday slate in week number 10 around the NFL. Scott mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huge victory in Landover against the Commanders in a great matchup on Sunday. That and plenty more up next on FFC.
There's smart and there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here and win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
Crowd standing now as one, exhorting the rookie on.
1981 Dodgers starter Fernando Valenzuela becomes the first MLB rookie to win a Cy Young Award.
Fernando Valenzuela, who threw 149 pitches tonight. That wasn't one for the Art Museum, but it was efficient, and he got the job done.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
In case you've been worried about AI taking your job and destroying the world economy, perhaps fear not. A large, well-known fast food chain is quietly dropping its AI-powered drive-through automated order-taking system after some mishaps.
Would you like extra sauce with your 2,100 orders of chicken nuggets?
Believe it or not, these are actual scenarios.
I'm sure you asked for 40 dozen pounds of butter.
The fatal flaw? Voice recognition AI that can't identify misidentified spoken orders.
I just want you to know that I have complete confidence in the long-term success of this mission. By the way, here is your 4-gallon van of bacon top caramel ice cream.
Yahoo! Follow me at Chicapalbo on X and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
If you're going to actually reward Penn State with a home game in that first round of the playoff, they better have an SEC team coming to them. They better. It better be Boise. I want to see Tennessee. I want to see one of these SEC teams go in there because any of them will beat Penn State at their place. Any of them will go in there and beat
You're absolutely right. Penn State's pathetic.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you. So now you can get the winning edge anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you. If you've got an earbud. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, it's Football Full Circle and an entire recap of the Sunday slate in week number 10 around the NFL. Scott, one of the marquee matchups in that early window on Sunday. The 6-2 Pittsburgh Steelers atop the AFC North entering the 7-2 Washington Commanders atop the NFC East entering Sunday, squaring off outside the nation's capital in Landover. The Commanders a very slight home favorite just by 1.5 points. And that point would be very, very crucial just on the other side. The Steelers win 28-27, outright as an underdog for the third time this year. Total in the mid-40s does sky over. And Scott, the offense looks really good with Russell Wilson. 3 starts now as a Steeler, 3 wins for Pittsburgh, including the game-winning touchdown toss with just about 2.5 minutes remaining. 32-yard moon ball into the welcoming arms of the newest Steeler, Mike Williams. Pittsburgh is 3-0 with Russell Wilson under center. Huge victory yesterday in Landover.
Yeah, if you're Mike Williams, right, you talk about going from the devil to heaven here, going from the Jets situation. You're the scapegoat, you're the bum, you're this, you're that. And now you get thrown to Pittsburgh and you score the game-winning touchdown, right? So what a great situation. And I got to say, being not that I'm a Russell Wilson guy, but I'm an anti-Justin Fields guy, Ben. There's no way in the world Justin Fields would have made that pass. You said it perfectly. It was a moonshot. I mean, it was just like an Eiffel Tower going way up and coming straight back down. So crazy it is. Pittsburgh goes for a fake punt, which they don't execute. That leads to an easy Washington score. Washington, a couple possessions later, botches a punt return. That leads to an easy Pittsburgh score. Great game. That should have been flexed really to 4 o'clock. We should have kicked that Eagles-Dallas game out of there, which was another CBS game. But, it's Dallas. So you're always going to have those guys at primetime, unfortunately. But that was a good win. And again, I don't think, Ben, Pittsburgh will beat Kansas City. I don't even know if they're going to win the division. But that is one of the keys, though. I think that Pittsburgh has to win their division. But they have what I think it takes to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Great defense. A running game that can utilize the clock, keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes, good head coaching. You rely on a guy and a quarterback that, maybe he's not going to throw for 300 yards, but is going to be able to make the plays, in a last-minute drive or last 2-minute drive. So they have on paper for me what it would take to beat Kansas City. It's one thing to have it. It's another thing to execute it, but at least they do have it in my eyes.
At least in comparison, Scott, to Kansas City, Pittsburgh and KC, since the end of the Ben Roethlisberger era that came to a close in 2021, so the start of 2022, Pittsburgh and KC, the only 2 teams in the NFL in the last 2.5 years to have a winning record outright as an underdog. The Chiefs only 5 games, but they've won all 5. The Steelers are now 14-11 straight up as an underdog outright and 15-9-1 against the spread. Listen, we give the benefit of the doubt to Mike Tomlin. This Steelers team, though, trying to change the trajectory of just being a playoff team or a winning football team, but that's the ceiling. Of course, the Steelers have not reached the AFC Championship game since 2016, but certainly in a good spot right now, still atop the AFC North. Scott, the Commanders, in their 3 losses this year, they lost their opener to Tampa Bay. They kept it competitive against the Ravens, did lose that game by a touchdown, and then yesterday at home, as the slight home favorite, lose by a point. Still think Washington is a darn good team and going to be in playoff contention. And the Commanders, they get ready to host the Eagles on a short week Thursday night game. We'll talk about Philadelphia in Dallas in just a moment. But the game between Pittsburgh and Washington, I thought showed that both teams are ready to be a playoff contender.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Pittsburgh and Washington in a similar plight here, Ben, in that, these division races, usually there's a separation. You know the team that wins the division generally is going to be better than the second place team, right? But, in these 2 cases, not necessarily the case. And it's big because if you're a wild card team, if Baltimore wins the North and we'll say Philadelphia wins the NFC East and Washington and Pittsburgh are wild card teams, that means they got to play on the road 3 times before they get to the Super Bowl. That's it's hard to win on the road in the postseason once, let alone 3 times. So you got to really win the division. And that's why I say I don't know if Pittsburgh will end up doing that. They do play Kansas City, so we'll get a chance to see how they match up. But same thing for Washington, right? They got to win that division. You don't want to be on the road 3 straight times. They didn't win the game, but I thought they played well enough. It wasn't like they did anything crazy, just jumping off sides. Maybe didn't get the football back in the final minute, but still, it was a good game for them. Just not a win. Pittsburgh
remains in the top spot in the AFC North, and yet the Ravens are the favorites. They play each other this upcoming Sunday. The Commanders no longer in the top spot because of Philadelphia's 5-game win streak. We'll talk about the Birds and the dreadful Dallas Cowboys next.
The winning edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. Top 25 hoops on Sunday. Number 6, Gonzaga beat Arizona State 88-80. Number 15, Creighton 96-70 winners over Fairleigh Dickinson. Number 17, Indiana beat Eastern Illinois 90-55. The Lions rallied with 19 points in the second half to beat the Texans 26-23 on Sunday. Jake Bates kicked a 52-yard field goal at the buzzer to win it as Detroit overcame 5 interceptions thrown by quarterback Jared Goff. The Lions improved to 8-1 overall, 5-0 away from home, while the Texans dropped their first game of the season at their home field. They're 6-4 with the loss. Goff finished 15 of 30 passing for 240 yards and a pair of touchdowns. It was the 7th consecutive win of the season for the Lions, who sit on top of the NFC North ahead of the Vikings. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Shop early, save big all month long during Black Friday build-up at Lowe's. Right now, get select pre-lit artificial Christmas trees starting at just $59.98. Don't wait to save. Shop these deals today, in-store or online, because Lowe's knows deals. Discount taken at time of purchase while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
After you use Bounce Dryer Sheets and realize how fresh, soft, less wrinkled, and less staticky your laundry can be, you'll every time. Like those socks that smell like they've been through a marathon. Or that blanket that's got wrinkles on its wrinkles. Maybe even your chatty coworker who keeps distracting you. Okay, Bounce Dryer Sheets can't do it all. But for fresher, softer, better laundry,
Days are getting cooler and shadows are getting longer. You know what that means? It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Welcome back to FFC Live right here on Sports Grid Radio. Scott, the Commanders no longer in the top spot in the NFC East, falling to 7-3 after the loss to the Steelers, and also because the Philadelphia Eagles have won 5 straight games. Yesterday on the road in Dallas, heavily favored, of course, with the injury to Dak Prescott that is more than likely going to sideline him for the remainder of this season. The Eagles were a touchdown and a hook favorite at the Star. They easily cover that number, 34-6, the victory for Philadelphia. 5 straight wins, Scott, for the Birds, but there's been a few times in this 5-game win streak it hasn't felt overly optimistic in Philadelphia. Yesterday, the first time in 3 chances, the Eagles have covered as more than a touchdown favorite on this 5-game win streak. And if they play as they did yesterday, albeit against the shorthanded and dreadful Dallas Cowboys, the Eagles look the part of a championship contender.
Yeah, they would be on that perch. I do think, as much as we talked about Washington last segment, Ben, I think Philadelphia does win that division. I like them from the beginning of the year. A little dicey there in the beginning, but, they're slowly but surely coming around, getting A.J. Brown more, healthier as the season progresses. Getting Jalen Hurts healthier would also help them out, obviously. So, can they compete with Detroit and San Francisco? Big 3? I think they can. I really do. I like them. Going into Dallas, that was a methodical win. You got nothing out of the Cowboys. To me, it was more of a Cowboys loss. There's so many more storylines than a Philadelphia win. But, keep plodding along. If you're the Eagles, do what you have to do. Win in spite of Nick Sirianni. Don't let him have to have any coaching decisions on the sidelines, and then you'll be all right in Philadelphia.
Yeah, no doubt. And, Scott, when you look at the 2 quarterbacks yesterday for the boys, Cooper Rush, 13 of 23 for 45 yards. Missed CeeDee Lamb in the end zone because CeeDee could not see because of the sun. And then Jerry Jones was asked about the design of his stadium afterward and lost his mind. Really, the sun? We know where the sun's going to be all year long. pretty much throwing Mike McCarthy and his game planning under the bus in doing so. Trey Lance filled in 4 of 6 for 21 yards and a pick. The 2 Dallas quarterbacks, Scott, when you take sack yardage into account, combined for just 49 total passing yards at the end of the game. Dallas is 3-6. They're 0-4 both straight up and against the spread at home, a place where they had won 16 consecutive home regular season games entering 2024. It's as bad as it gets for the boys right now.
I was so disappointed in Cooper Rush, Ben. I bought in. I thought maybe they would rally the troops. They didn't like Dak. He's going to come in. Had success a couple of years ago. You know, his numbers in those games weren't overwhelming, but he was throwing for 200 yards, 225. You know, he showed like he was a competent quarterback, kind of like with Skylar Thompson with the Miami Dolphins. You know, 2 years ago, came in, couple of games, looked like he was going to be okay. You understand why he's on the team. Then he got thrown in there with Tua being hurt, and he was god-awful. Same thing with Cooper. I mean, 2 years ago, looked like he was a competent enough quarterback. Okay, you got a shot with him. He was embarrassingly bad. What is that guy doing in an NFL uniform? He couldn't take a snap from center without fumbling the ball. He had 5 completions for 12 yards at one point in this game. I mean, that's almost mathematically impossible. And they couldn't throw the ball down the field, and you got a wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb somehow, some way. You can't get him the ball. I mean, it was embarrassing. If you told Philadelphia yesterday you had to win by 50, they would have won by 50. It was one of those games. And then the dopey sun, you know where the sun is. It's going to be in their eyes every single game, Jerry. You know, put a curtain up. Why would you build a stadium, that goofy stadium, where the light shines in? I mean, it's beyond dumb. But it's just, you know, you look for excuses for Dallas, and you know that's where they've gone with the head coach, they've gone to the quarterback, they've gone to the owner, Ben, and now they're going to go to the stadium. So.
Absolutely so. And Scott, there is a choice, by the way, to put a curtain over the sun, as they often do for concerts and other events, just not for football games, for whatever reason. So the Eagles tied for the second best price now to win the NFC Championship, alongside the preseason favorites, that being the San Francisco 49ers, who won in Week 8, entering their bye to get back to an even 500, and then during the bye week, got healthier. The season debut yesterday in Tampa for Christian McCaffrey. He was okay, 107 scrimmage yards, more through the air than on the ground, and played more than 88% of the snaps yesterday. It was actually the other guy, Scott, who was injured and came back for San Francisco, that was way more impactful, both good and bad. That's the field goal kicker, Jake Moody. He missed 3 field goals, but rectified it, hitting the game-winning 44-yarder as time expires, as the Niners win 23-20 in McCaffrey's season debut, beating the Buccaneers, but not covering as a 6.5-point road favorite.
Yeah, and nearly getting into a brawl on the sidelines with Deebo Samuel. You see that? You know, after his third miss, Samuel's all upset. He gets in the face of Moody. The long snapper steps in. They kind of get entangled a little bit. I mean, you know, it's amazing, man. You know, when everyone's winning, we're all happy and this and that. You know, the first sign of adversity with the San Francisco team, and you're seeing some things. Now, they managed to win yesterday. They didn't cover. And I was one laying to 6.5. Wasn't happy. They were all long field goals. I think one was a 44-yarder, the other at 49 and like 50. Yeah. But, you know, you got to make a couple of those, right, if you're in the NFL. But he got the big one. You know, he got the one that ultimately won the game. McCaffrey, what did he run for, like 39 yards, I think it was? I mean, they could not run the ball at all yesterday, less than 100 yards. So not the A game out of San Francisco, but there's a long ways to go, and they'll be the number one challenge to Detroit, no doubt, in the NFC.
Yeah, certainly so, Scott. And they are trending in the direction that they almost were last year. They started unbeaten 5-0. It was never that good this year, but they dropped 3 consecutive entering their bye, came out of the bye week 10, hammered Jacksonville, and won 6 straight as a result. They didn't hammer the Buccaneers yesterday, but still a much-needed road win. And with Christian McCaffrey back, it is only going to get better and better. 5-4 for the San Francisco 49ers. Scott, you feel for the Bucs, who are off to a 4-2 start this year, now have dropped 4 in a row. Of course, they are incredibly shorthanded offensively. Baker is doing everything he can. They're now probably going to lose their outstanding offensive tackle, Tristan Wirfs, for a few weeks. They've covered in 2 consecutive games against the Chiefs and the Niners as a hefty underdog, and yet a heartbreaking loss to show for it.
Yeah, and not only covering because they're getting 8-9, right? They're covering. They could have won both these games. Obviously, you lose the one in overtime and yesterday. I've gotten a lot more respect for Baker. I've never been a big fan of his, but he's a gutsy quarterback, Ben. He's not afraid to put his head down, do whatever it takes. The whole team in general, Todd Bowles, not a big fan of his either on the sidelines with all his X's and O's. But as far as keeping his team together, those are two back-to-back nice covers, and where you get one, you understand that. But that's why I bet Fred, I really figured, all right, they shot whatever they had last week against Kansas City, but they were able to rally the troops and play well again, but they just can't get over the hump. So it looks like it's going to be a difficult, long season for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, unfortunately so, injuries being a big component of that. Scott, elsewhere in the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, the only team with a winning record, that still remains true. But a dismal and disappointing loss yesterday in the Big Easy. The interim bump continues. Darren Rizzi wins his interim head coaching debut for the Saints, snapping a 7-game skid. Again, missed field goals, huge component of the game in the Big Easy. Younghoe Koo, one of the better kickers this year in the NFL, misses 3 field goals yesterday. One was blocked, but still 3 big misses as the Saints win 20-17 outright as a 3.5-point home underdog again to snap that 7-game slide.
Yeah, the good old coaches fired system comes through again. One of the all-time favorites for me, Ben. They should have fired, the head coach a couple of games ago, to tell you the truth. In fact, they should have fired him after last season. They shouldn't even have brought him back, to tell you the truth. I don't know if it's a little too late. You really need Atlanta to come back to the pack, which they're more than capable of doing, so we'll see. Last year, the Saints went on a little bit of a run, but that was like the last month. This they had at least a few more weeks to maybe turn things around here.
Yeah, Scott, I know you have the trends even longer than 2020, but since 2020, with Darren Rizzi leading New Orleans to a win, the interim head coach in the first week following a firing, 7-6 straight up and 10-3 against the spread. The Falcons outgained the Saints by more than 100 yards, but because of the field goal woes, ended up losing a big divisional game on the road. We continue the Sunday recap next.
Yeah, it's getting cooler. Football weather is here. Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Fire crews on both coasts of the U.S. continued battling wildfires Sunday, including a blaze in New York and New Jersey that killed a parks employee and another in Southern California that destroyed more than 130 structures and damaged dozens more. Firefighters continued making progress against a wildfire northwest of Los Angeles in Ventura County that broke out Wednesday and quickly exploded in size due to dry, warm, and gusty Santa Ana winds. Meanwhile, New York State Police say they were investigating the death of 18-year-old Dario Vasquez, who died when a tree fell on him Saturday afternoon as he battled a major brush fire in Sterling Forest located in New York State's Greenwood Lake near the New Jersey line. 12 students from Salisbury University in Maryland have been charged with a hate crime for allegedly attacking a man because of his sexual orientation on October 15th. Police believe that a group of college-age men used a social media account to lure the victim to an off-campus apartment complex where the alleged assault occurred. All 12 have been linked to a fraternity at Salisbury University.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Lowe's honors our military community this Veterans Day and every day. To say thank you, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get 10% off everyday purchases, plus free silver key status with My Lowe's Rewards. It's our way of showing our gratitude to the brave people who have and continue to serve our country. Learn more now at Lowe's.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards that zero-turn lawnmower you've always wanted. And after using its edge-shaping technology to meticulously sculpt the face of the Mona Lisa into your grass, you'll become the undisputed king of Saturday morning lawn care, leaving your neighbor and sworn enemy Gary to question his place in the delicate neighborhood ecosystem. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Scott, let's round out our Sunday recap. In our final segment, we'll preview the finale on this Monday in LA between the Rams and the Dolphins. Let's get a couple of games out of the way that were not really great or all that impactful. The Vikings beat the Jags without scoring a touchdown, and both quarterbacks combining to throw 5 interceptions. And yet somehow, some way, Minnesota holds on for a win, 12-7 against Jacksonville. The Jags fall to 2-8. It's only a matter of time, it seems, before Doug Peterson ends his time as Jacksonville's head coach. John Parker Romo, on a day where field goal kicking was huge around the NFL, delivers perfect 4 for 4 for Minnesota. The Vikings win 12-7. Again, Scott, booked as a 7.5-point road favorite in Duval. Against Mac Jones and the Jags, it's supposed to be easier than that. At least they come out with a victory to improve to 7-2.
Yeah, another favorite that I had that I thought would win. First drive, they went right down the field. I settled for a field goal, but I thought, all right, this is going exactly as planned. They're going to win this football game, and not the case. At least the second team that has won a football game, not scoring a touchdown, playing a team that did. Remember, the Redskins or Commanders beat the Giants earlier, though. So same thing yesterday. So it's been at least 2. Kind of weird. 3 interceptions from Sam Darnold. He's now had 5 in his last 2 games, and we're starting, maybe, just maybe, Ben, we're starting to see the Sam Darnold that we kind of feared. So J.J. McCarthy, I'm sure on edge for the first month and a half or so of the season, resting maybe a little bit easier right now. Right? They should have won that game. They really they did win. They should have won that game by 2 touchdowns easily. That should not have been as difficult as it was yesterday.
Mac Jones had 2 INTs, and Jacksonville had just 143 total yards somehow, some way. But Scott, to your point, Sam Darnold, 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in the last 4 games for the Vikes. Of course, they started off undefeated, a perfect 5-0, 11 touchdowns to only 4 picks in those first 5 wins. So we are starting to see just a little bit of regression. The Chargers beat the Titans as expected. LA continues to win. Jim Harbaugh does not take long to build up an organization. The Bolts are now 6-3. They have covered in 5 of 6. They win by 10 yesterday at home against the Titans, 27-17, covering as a 7.5-point home favorite.
Yeah, I gave up the by the way touchdown, so the game went over. Only the second over in a Chargers game this year. But they dominated. We were doing in-game live at the time, Ben, and I didn't quite get it. Boy, they were giving you a gift because they went in as a 7.5-point favorite, and they were leading by 7 basically the whole way. They were keeping the line right around 8.5, 9, and you could see it was only a matter of time before they, would take, complete control of the game. Tennessee's a bad football team. They were back to Will Levis yesterday. I get it. You know what you have in Mason Rudolph, I guess. So let's just see what we have in Levis. And if we realize he's not any good, then we'll get rid of him at the end of the year. Or, we'll draft a quarterback at the end of the year. So that was an easy win for the Chargers. Kind of like Pittsburgh, good defense, can run the ball, good quarterback. I don't know if they got the big-time wide receiver that would really be able to get it done against the Chargers. But, they only lost 17 to the Chiefs, only lost 17-10 earlier this year. So they kind of have, what it takes to beat Kansas City.
Yeah, just the second over, Scott, for LA this year. As you mentioned, Jim Harbaugh has them off to a 6-3 start. Listen, I'm critical of Will Levis always. Clean football yesterday. No turnovers for the first time in any of his 6 starts this season. Final international game of the year, an early start in Munich. It was not supposed to be pretty, and it wasn't, but it goes to overtime. Carolina wins its second consecutive game, 20-17 outright as a 6.5-point dog against the G-Men. Scott, there's many different ways of looking at a game. Eddie Pinheiro hits the game-winning 36-yard field goal in OT. The Giants storm back, scoring 10 unanswered in the fourth to force the extra session. And Tyrone Tracy, who had a great game, 103 yards and a touchdown, but on the first offensive play of OT, fumbled, leading to that easy field goal and the game winner for Carolina. But some Giants fans were like, yes, Tyrone, great game. You showed what you got. Helps us with our draft position. Good work.
Yeah, it is sad, but that's, you got a lot of football left, but you have a lot of teams already thinking about that at the end of the year and knowing that your quarterback probably won't be Danny Dimes, as I like to call him, Danny Nichols. So, But a horrible loss for the Giants. You can't lose to Carolina, Ben. I didn't think they were this bad. You know, they lead the NFL in sacks with 35 coming in. I thought they'd cause havoc with Bryce Young at quarterback. Young played pretty well. You know, back-to-back games now for Bryce. Not great, but definitely better than what we've seen over the first year and a half of his career. So maybe they got a little something there with him. But that was just an awful loss. Like I said, off week, after a bye, you got to be a little careful there if, you're the New York Giants front office right now.
The Panthers' first 2-game win streak, just 2, but the first 2-game win streak since late November into early December of the 2022 NFL season. Scott, from one New York football team that is a disaster to perhaps even a bigger disaster, because the Jets actually had high expectations entering this season. And here we are once again, expecting the Jets to win a football game as a slight road favorite in Arizona. Nope, and not even close. The Cardinals blow out the Jets in the desert 31-6. Arizona wins outright as a slight home underdog. Make that 4 straight wins for Arizona, Scott. 3 of the 4 outright as an underdog. But the story, of course, is the New York Jets now falling to 3-7 and just 3-4 straight up as the favored side this year.
Yeah, man, they look, I won't say so good, but they look good beating Houston last Thursday. Right. You think, okay, maybe Devontae Adams has his best game out of the 3 that he had up until that point with the Jets. You think maybe they turned it around. Yes, that explained why they're the 1.5-point road favorite, but just from start to finish, they were just outplayed by Arizona. I mean, just horrible. Yeah, Rodgers had no answer for it. What's he going to say, I guess, at this point? Because I think most of it is on him, to tell you the truth. 6 lousy points against an Arizona defense? Really? I can't get the ball to Devontae Adams until the second half. But the entire first half without a reception. I mean, just that offense is so bad. The numbers are comparable. They're not really that much better than what they were last year. So it's just amazing how bad this New York Jet team is.
22 of 35 for $151 out of Aaron Rodgers yesterday. No touchdown passes. That's 4.3 yards per attempt. 79 rushing yards. This offense is awful. And you thought that would be the thing to take the Jets over that next step. That 13-year playoff drought is about to be 14 here very, very soon. One closing thought from Sunday and some quick Monday night previews next.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall. The World Series is on its way. And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the Sports Grid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. God, I'm not sure which loss was worse yesterday, the Jets or the Bears, but both were a disaster. Chicago at home as a 6.5-point favorite, where they were perfect in Soldier Field all season long until yesterday. Get beat by the Patriots 19-3. You said it at the start of the show. 23 consecutive offensive possessions without scoring a touchdown. Caleb Williams looks lost. This Bears franchise quit after the Hail Mary play. I think it's only a matter of time before Matt Eberfloozer, as I like to call him now, gets canned. We'll see if the McCaskey family has the stones to do that during the season or right here, right now. But Scott, when it came to the game yesterday, it wasn't just that the Bears got beat or had an off day or did not live up to what the odds expected at home. They looked lost. They never looked like they had a chance. And that's the most damning evaluation you can make.
Yeah, against the New England Patriots. We're not talking about the Kansas City here. I mean, how do you go toe to toe with Washington, one of the better teams, and then you lose to Arizona and really not competitive, and then you lose to yesterday to the Patriots, which is awful. 3 straight games for Caleb Williams without a touchdown pass as well. No interceptions, but 3 straight games in an NFL season without a touchdown pass. I mean, that's, now they're talking about, changing who's going to be calling the plays. Offensive coordinator's job is apparently safe, but he might not be calling the plays anymore. When you get to the point like who's calling plays and you start changing that up, and that's just, the precursor to, other things that are really going on wrong behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're saving face, Scott, right? You're looking for one last little effort to try to change something. It needs to change. You feel terrible for Caleb, 16 of 30 for 120 yards. You look at situations and scenarios all the time. Exactly,
Exact
where
line
you're
time.
picked. And
right.
And you see Jaden Daniels and what he is doing in Washington. And you see C.J. Stroud last year in comparison to what Bryce Young was able to do in Carolina. Here it is once again. Caleb Williams, every time he drops back, there's a guy in his face as soon as he pretty much receives the snap. It is just as bad as it gets. And it looks as though the locker room that has been critical of the coaching staff, especially in the aftermath of the Hail Mary against Washington a few weeks ago, it just looks to be a disaster that doesn't seem to change. And Scott, I'm not sure if you saw this or not. Matt Eberflus called in for a weekly radio appearance on a local affiliate in Chicago. His call dropped off 3 times because of his cell service. And one of the radio hosts said, "Coach, your cell phone service is as bad as our offense is right now." And the interview was canceled from that point. So nothing's working in the Windy City.
That's funny. Between that and then you got Michael Parsons kind of calling out Mike McCarthy. You get to the point of the season where you have some expectations and they're not coming through. And nowadays, old school players, even media member wouldn't say anything. But nowadays, it's like, you know what? Fair game for everybody. Fair game.
Yeah.
Couple of things here real quickly before we get to the Dolphins. Mahomes, we were talking about him as an underdog. 11-3, Ben, straight up as an underdog in his career. 12-1-1 against the spread. And then the coach's fired system, 18-22 straight up over the last 20-plus years. And more importantly, 23-17 against the spread. Not as good as it is in college. It's like great. It really, I think, in fact, it's undefeated this year. NFL, not so, but, 23-17, nothing to cry about.
You'll take those covers anytime you can get them, Scott. Tonight in Los Angeles, Monday night finale of week number 10. The Rams, 2.5-point home favorite inside SoFi against the Dolphins. 48.5 is the total. Can your Fins win a game outright as an underdog? Something they have very rarely done with Mike McDaniel as the head coach.
Yeah, I got to put the reading glasses on for these because they're ugly. They haven't won the AFC East in gazillion years, right? We know that. Where are we here? On the West Coast, 1-4 straight up, 0-5 against the spread when they play a game the week before, as they did here, which shows they don't prepare for games for whatever reason. And underdogs nearly as bad. They just don't win these games. I'm surprised the Rams were only 2.5-point favorites, but I really am with Nakua back and Cooper Kupp healthy. I think the Rams win this one easily.
Yeah, and Scott, the Rams have won 3 straight. They're only getting healthier at the wide receiver position. Tyreek Hill dealing with a wrist injury. Some of his props are not even listed yet for this game. Not a great indication. There's no doubt that Miami looks so much better with Tua Tagovailoa back. But they still have dropped both of the games since his return from IR. 3-15 straight up as an underdog with McDaniel as the head coach. And at a 2-6 mark, Miami just needs to win some football games, underdog or not. He is Scott Wetzel. I'm Ben Stevens. Football Full Circle returns tomorrow, noon Eastern time on SportsGrid Radio.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.